hot stocks getting put to the test this week as key names like Tilray and Canopy Growth kick off earnings. Let's get to Aditi Roy with more on what to expect. Hey, Aditi.
Hey, Melissa, and both those companies have very different tasks at hand with those earnings. One factor favoring top-line growth at both companies, Canadian adult use sales were up 22% in April and 15% in May, month over month, as more stores opened in the country. It'll be a lot tougher for those companies to blame friction in the space for lagging sales revenue. You may remember last quarter, Canopy Growth reported a decline in revenue from gross adult use and medical cannabis sales in Canada. Tilray will likely be talking about domestic sales in Canada, but also pointing to international investments. The company just announced it is increasing its cultivation capacity in Portugal. We'll see if that folds into the guidance. We'll also look for any comments on Tilray's investment in the U.S. CBD space. The company's been partnering with Authentic Brands, which is behind Nine West and Juicy Couture, among other brands. We'll see if Tilray has any color on the types of CBD products and timeline we can see those things roll out from that deal. Canopy Growth, though, has its own challenges, given that last quarter was rough. And this is the first earnings call after the ouster of co-CEO Bruce Linton. The numbers Canopy will report will reflect Linton's last quarter with the company. Mark Zekulin, who's now sole CEO, will likely set a tone of fiscal discipline, a slowdown in acquisitions, and a focus on the local market. Morgan Passia of Poseidon Asset Management also tells me he'll be watching margins for both companies, because if they're having to cut prices to get shelf space, that would have a margin impact. Melissa, back to you.
Aditi, thank you. And before we get into this trade, I want to mention that Tim has a cannabis ETF, CNBS, and for disclosure purposes, all the components are listed on our website, fast.cnbc.com. So, Tim, in terms of declines that we saw last quarter in adult use marijuana, was that mainly because there wasn't enough supply available?
Yeah, I think there was issues in rollout. Our last segment was called Potholes on Main Street. I mean, this one could be called Potholes
in Potland.
I mean, main holes on Pot Street. And with what was going on in Canada, I don't think it's representative of really what you have. If anything, what we learned from Aurora and Aphria, who have already reported, they're the first two big heavyweights who have reported that actually there's been a slight surprise to the upside. Some people actually feel, first to Canopy, that we're expecting somewhere around 110 million Canadian as their top line number. Maybe there could be a little bit of weakness there. The most important thing for Canopy right now is gross margins based upon how they came in at 16% last quarter. People want to see them up around 23%. Aditi talked about the change in leadership. Look, I think there's a major driver for this company for them to articulate exactly who is going to be taking the helm, and most likely it's going to be someone who has a very large CPG background, which is what this company is, just like their parent in Constellation Brands. So I think Tilray is a story of many different, very interesting strategic global partnerships. She talked about the Authentic Brands. I think the Manitoba also acquisition will be one that starts to show some returns. I think, frankly, in Canada, Tilray lags badly the other big boys. So you want to see what's going on. This Portugal deal, I think, is one that's very interesting. That is playing into their distribution into Germany, which people are very excited. And let's remember that they're also partnered with Novartis, ABI. So they have these strategic partnerships by big consumer players.
Are supply concerns exacerbated by CanTrust and the finding that a second facility was not properly licensed by Health Canada? Well,
I think in the short run, the answer is I don't think we know the answer to that, but there's no question that this has been a major disruption, and the corporate governance around this is something that's given all investors pause, and it's affected all of them, even though I think different companies, and this is why you really need to do your work, folks, because corporate governance risks are a big deal. Demand in Canada, and again, this is not why you're investing in the sector, and again, 25 times EBITDA for Tilray is not a valuation that even makes sense. It's the global footprint. It's what these guys are doing in the U.S., and I think that's what people are focused on.